Hello, lovely people. It feels like it's been a little while. I think 10 days since the last vlog, and I did put an extra little tutorial in since then, but we haven't had a chat in a bit, have we? I'm Nicola. This is Stitches and Slapdashery. I'm in my sewing room as usual. It's a little bit of a disaster. I did tidy it up the other day. I like to tidy it up between projects if I can, because otherwise things get a little bit out of hand. But for some reason, it's out of hand again. Oh well. Creative chaos. I have a little doohickey, a little sign, a little framed sign somewhere in here that says, where is it? I don't know. Creative clutter is better than idle neatness or something. It's around here somewhere. I don't know where I put it. It's got lost in the clutter. Oh dear. First thing I'm going to say, if you can see something on my forehead, I did put a little bit of concealer on it, but I did get zapped at the dermatologist last week. I have been waiting since last August for the dermatologist appointment. I had really bad rosacea last year. I mean, I've always got rosacea, but last summer, it was blotchy and it was pimply and it was gross. And my GP referred me to this dermatologist, and it took, I think, 6 months to hear from them, and then another 2 months to actually get the appointment. So, of course, my skin had improved quite a lot by the time I heard from them. So I still went because, you know, don't want to waste that appointment. Waited a long time for it. And I talked to him briefly about the rosacea and that, and he was able to just deal with a little bit of a scaly thing on my forehead. I said to him, I've got this dry, itchy, flaky, scaly thing on my forehead, which I think is the same thing my husband had a couple of years ago on his nose, and it's from too much sun damage when you were a child. And they call it precancerous, but they can easily deal with it. He had a chemical peel. I had just a spray of dry ice, and of course it's scabs, and it'll be looking weird for a while, but hopefully it's not too obvious. I also hacked my hair today. 1/2 inch on the clippers on the back and sides, and a whole bunch of scissoring on the top. So it feels a little bit short, and I'm happy with it. I don't know. I'm not scared of super short hair since I buzz cut it all last year anyway. So, and of course I did it myself during the COVID year or two. So I'm not worried if it doesn't look perfect. I'm not working right now, so I'm not going to be self-conscious about it. It seems to have been a bit of a week of appointments, or 10 days of appointments. I went to the dermatologist. I was 2 hours in the dentist's chair a couple of days ago. Not that I had to be, but since my braces came off in February, I had some little gaps up by the gum line, some triangular gaps, because this tooth here used to be crossed behind the front tooth. And there was also a filling in the front tooth here that was a different shade than the rest of the tooth. And so I asked my dentist whether she thought she could, you know, fill it in and make it look better. And yeah, nearly 2 hours in the chair. Oh. You know, I've always been terrified of the dentist, and I'm not terrified of her anymore. I mean, I love my dentist. I'm not terrified of going anymore, but I just hate that discomfort and the feeling that you're going to gag on your own saliva, or something that's going to go down your throat that you don't want to go down your throat, like some chemical or bits of, yeah. Anyway, I never do, but there's always that worry there, and it's like, ugh. But hey, I'm glad with the result. I think she went a little light on the color of those filled teeth over there. They kind of stand out to me, but I'm sure everything will kind of settle down after a while. Of course, it meant that my retainer from the orthodontist didn't fit anymore. So the next day I went to see them. They did a new scan and printed me a new retainer the same day. So that's awesome. So that's all sorted, and hopefully I won't have to go to the dentist for a very long time now. I do have another chiro appointment on Friday. This is on the same theme as the appointments. And I have an acupuncture appointment because I decided that my plantar fasciitis isn't going away and I'm going to get some acupuncture. Worth a try. Haven't been to see him for over 5 years. He's in a new location now and I haven't been to him at that location. So we know it's over 5 years ago. That's what happens when you get to this age. You get more medical appointments. So I hear. I'm hoping not, but seems to be happening. Anyway, not talking about sewing, knitting or crochet yet, am I? So let's start with something funny. My husband has this nose hair trimmer. It's a tiny little metal thing with a little blade in. You kind of stick it up your nose and you twist the doohickey. And it came with a plastic sleeve with just a little cap on the top, which broke in about 5 minutes. And so he suggested I might like to make a little case for it. Well, that took me about 5 minutes. I quickly cut a rectangle of vinyl, checked it against the size of wrapped it around that thing, checked it against it, and just did a seam down and across. And then I pinked the outside edge and then just angled this top bit. So I bet you won't see any other vlogs today where the vlogger has made a nose hair trimmer case. But you know what? It works. I haven't shown him it yet, but I think he'll be fine with that. It's snug enough that it doesn't fall out too easily, but it comes out without getting stuck. So it was purely luck. I just cut off this little rectangle of vinyl that was sticking off the piece I had and just wrapped it around, and I was like, oh, all I have to do is straighten it up. Boom, done. So that's finished object number 1. Super simple, super quick. So what else have I been making this week? Oh, before I go into what I've been making, last week I had a fun little road trip with a friend. It was really only within our town. Okay, I don't know if you can count it as a road trip if it's just in the town, in the same town. But anyhow, we went to a couple of yarn shops and a fabric shop and a thrift shop and Michael's. And where else? Oh yes, we went to a quilt store, and because, you know, we're both sort of toying with the idea of getting a serger. I doubt if I'll actually take the plunge because I don't know if I could really justify it. Plus, where would I put it? However, the owner of the shop was very happy to talk to us about sergers for about 45 minutes. And he showed us the different brands they sell, the baby locks, the Genomes, why he thinks you should go straight to an air threading serger rather than faffing about with a basic one. Did you notice the pun there? Faffing about. He had a faff as well. Anyway, it was very educational. And yeah, I think if I went for an air threading serger, it's at least $2,000. And I know I can pick up a cheapy one for $350 at Costco. Of course, it's a Janome Magnolia, which does get great reviews online, but it's more manual in that you have to physically thread everything through and you have to adjust your own tension and all that. So I don't know if any of you have got any suggestions or recommendations for sergers, but tell me if you got one and you think it was a waste of money. Tell me if you got one and you think it's the best thing since sliced bread, because I'd like to know. So there has been a little bit of knitting and crochet and quite a bit of sewing. The knitting of the 10-stitch twist baby blanket, I've only been doing it when I've been out and about. And so if I'm a passenger in the car or if I'm at the tea shop, I've whipped it out. Knitting in public still gets quite a bit of attention. I don't know if you guys do that, but yeah, I was at the tea shop with my husband the other day and a couple of people were commenting on what I was making. So it probably hasn't changed much since I last showed it to you. This marker here, see that dangly marker right there? That's where I have to start adding an extra row or ridge between my short rows. So yeah, I'm still on the third section, really, the third round, because at the moment I'm doing 3 ridges between short rows. At this point I'll start doing 4. So it hasn't really grown much because it's just an out of the house thing. But let's see, how much of that first ball have I got left? Oh, I've just got a little bit of the first ball left. And I guess I should tell you what yarn it is, shouldn't I? It's Ice Yarn's Sweet Baby. And I don't know if it has a colourway on it. I'm pretty sure I've looked before and I haven't found it. No. Maybe it only comes in the one colour because it's got all the colours already in it. So they didn't feel they needed to have a different bunch of colours. I don't know. And I actually have 4 altogether of that ball, but I don't think I'm going to have the patience to carry on with this blanket beyond 2 balls worth. I think I'll want to do something new after that. I'm dropping things on the floor again. There go my reading glasses. The other work in progress that's kind of my couch project, because we all need a couch project, right? In the evening when everything else has been done all your chores for the day and you're putting your feet up after dinner. I'd love to say it's making a decent dent in my stash, but my DK stash is looking awfully full still. Still a lot left. The pile of squares looks like this. And I'm making the Daisy Flower Charity Square. And I have, I don't even know how many I've got, but I won't count them because I'm sure you don't want to watch me count them. So my plan has been to use my pinky purpley yarns as the flower petals and my Brand Mandala echoes or echo caves for the outer parts. And so I've been in the middle of this really long dark blue phase and I'm like, oh, let me get to some green, please. This is boring. Anyhow, the idea is that I may make a sweater out of these. I just haven't decided whether it's going to be something super simple where I make it all out of squares, or if I make a yoke with just regular crochet and then put the squares at the bottom, or make the sleeves in the squares and then make the body in regular crochet. No decisions made on that yet. So, work in progress for sure. One of the things I've been doing that's been on my mind a lot, because I'm getting really close to my first market, is getting a few loose ends tied up. I bought some clips yesterday at the dollar store, like little coloured clips, and I've cut up some pieces of heavyweight paper so that I can make nice visible price tags, which I can clip to products on my table. Because I thought of doing little tiny price stickers, but I don't really want to stick things to the fabric, and I don't think it's going to stay anyway. So I'm going to use probably friction pens because they're erasable, and then if I change my mind on the prices, I want to change them for whatever reason, I can just erase it and rewrite it. So I'm ready for pricing things. I also had made 10 of these pen holders, a while back. And so I bought 10 of these really basic notebooks at the dollar store and some gel pens. And so each pen holder now comes with a notebook and pen. Because otherwise, I don't think people will even notice these products or know what they're for unless they're actually displayed with a notebook and pen. And I can put a little bit of a markup on the notebook and pen, and someone can go away with a completely usable thing without having to go then and buy their own notebook. I also printed up a couple of signs that I need to get laminated. And there hasn't really been a huge amount more product sewing. I did make one batch of something this week, which I'll show you in a minute, which I'm kicking myself over because I think I'm going to have to fiddle with them to make them more usable. I'll do that. I'll show you that after I've shown you the other bits and pieces. So this bag is, I think, really pretty and springy. It's a continuous, no, it's not a continuous zipper pouch. What am I saying? Oh, I thought I made that as, oh, I guess I didn't. That was last week. So it's a really basic zipper pouch. I did not use any sort of tutorial for it. But what I wanted to do was use some of my scraps. And I may have, did I show you this last week? No, I think I'm getting confused because I did a tutorial about this. Okay, so I haven't shown you this in a vlog. This bag was made by building up some scrappy fabric on a 3-inch wide strip of fusible interfacing. And my fabrics were allowed to extend enough either side as I was building it up so that I would have a seam allowance off the interfacing. And so when I had done that strip, it is a continuous zipper pouch. Excuse my brain fart. I've had a few of those lately. I've just realized that at the ripe old age of 61 and a half and a bit, I finally hit menopause, and boy, am I noticing the difference. We won't talk about why I'm noticing the difference, but yeah, let's just say there's some weird things happening. So yes, this is a continuous zipper pouch. It's based on the Lori Nunemaker design. That's right. Okay, now that I've got that correct, bear with me, guys, bear with me. What I did is I had made this 20-inch long strip because interfacing usually comes on a 20-inch wide bolt. And so I made up this fabric, and then I added denim top and bottom, 1/2 of a zipper, added a handle, added a very little bit of light interfacing to that denim because it was kind of thin. And then one of the fabrics that I used on the outside, I had enough of it to do the lining. It's cute rabbit, springy rabbit fabric. So that's cute. And I put that up on the denim upcycling group on not on Ravelry, on Facebook. See what I mean about my brain today? On Facebook, and people really liked it. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll make another one and I'll film it. So I did. I made a blue one. And this one I was able to make a little bit bigger because when you make these continuous zipper pouches, you want a little bit of excess zipper poking off the ends because you've got to take the puller off and put it back on again. So this one is about 9 inches, maybe a little less than that with the seam allowances. But I started out with an 18.5-inch long strip and a 20-inch zipper. This one I had a 22-inch zipper, so I was able to use my whole 20 inches of my interfaced fabric. And yeah, I was really happy with those. I'll probably make some more because they're fun and quick, except for the scrappy building up the interfacing fabric. That's not particularly quick, but it's enjoyable. And I used my bag and shoe fabric as the lining for that. I bought that specifically for lining bags because it's got the perfect theme. And I did not put any interfacing on that denim. Those jeans were obviously heavier than the ones on the other bag. So yeah, I will, if I can figure it out, put the link to my tutorial on the end card. I learned something new with my editing this week. For the tutorial, I thought, okay, I don't need any fancy bells and whistles on it. I'll just edit it on the little app that I've been using since last June. And then I wanted to put an end card on it to link to something. And I went to my laptop and I went into YouTube Studio and it said it wouldn't allow it. Wrong something. I can't remember what the wording was. So obviously I'm going to have to go onto my laptop to do my editing to get the end cards on. Honestly, I tell you, I'm just playing. I'm kind of playing with both right now to see which is the best way to do it all. And yeah, things aren't always coming out exactly how I want them, but yeah, this whole vlogging process has been a learning journey, that's for sure. Maybe once I've been at it for a year, I'll have finally figured it out. Oh, well. So, one fun little thing that I also made this week. I made a pouch to hold my phone on my arm while I'm exercising. Now, I'm not sure how effective it's going to be, but you know me, I don't want to buy something if I can make it. So Mr. Stitches and I have been counting our steps a lot. I've just got the basic Samsung Health thing on my phone. And so whenever we've been going out walking, we check our steps after we come home. And I've also, in the last few days, I've been upping my activity level because since the beginning of the year, I did pack on a few extra pounds and I thought, okay, it's time to kind of get active again. And so I wanted to actually have my phone on me if I was doing a workout at home and I didn't have a pocket. So I made this little pouch. I love this fabric. This silvery, turquoisey, pinky fabric is just so pretty. I just made a really basic pouch that would fit my phone. I put a piece of fabric on the back that would create 2 channels for this wide waistband elastic. And it fits on my upper arm. I did test it out last night when we went walking. It was a little slippy. I had to keep adjusting it. So I'm not sure if I'm going to have to tighten the elastic or what. But once I'd finished it, I thought, I think if I'm waving my arms around, doing a warm-up, something, that my phone's going to slide out. And so I thought, I need some Velcro or something. And I thought, could I find any Velcro in my sewing room? Like, I'm sure I have, even a small piece tucked away somewhere, but I couldn't find it. And then I mentioned it to one of my kids, and he said, oh, I've got something you can use. So he had this 2-sided stuff that, you wrap around cables. It sticks to itself. And so I stuck a little bit, or I sewed a little bit on there, and I sewed a little bit on that side. And so it holds my phone in. It's not super sticky, but it seems to hold enough. Of course, I did a workout yesterday. I was in the room across the hall from my sewing room, and we've got quite a lot of equipment in there. And I put some loud music on, as one does. 80s and 90s music, I think it was. That's my era, right? 80s. And I'm sort of doing all this warm-up and all this dumbbell work and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I forgot to wear my phone so that it would count the steps. Anyway, now that I've shown it to you, I can put it in a place where I will remember to use it, because of course I've been hanging on to it down here so that I could talk about it and show it to you. So yeah, it works. When I've tested it out on a workout, I'll know whether it works properly. There's an awful lot of glitter coming off this fabric. I tend not to buy glitter fabric for that reason. I'm not a fan of glitter usually. Yeah, glitter and balloons is something I never usually buy. But I think I bought this for a specific project at work. Can't remember now. Yeah, I think it was for doing a project for work that they went on display, and there was a reason I wanted that particular one, and I had some left. Very pretty. So that can go upstairs with me when I go up, and hopefully I'll remember to use it. I've also been doing a couple of workouts with this woman on YouTube called MadFit. I think her name's Hannah. And MadFit on YouTube has a bunch of things like just dance workouts. Sometimes they're just super short, like one song, or sometimes they're 20 or 30 minutes. And she is super fit. And so I followed along to a couple of hers, and oh my God, they can get quite challenging. But I'm like, this is doing me good. This is quite fun. When you exercise to music, for some reason, it's a little more fun, isn't it? Yeah. I'm hoping all this extra energy that I seem to be using is going to be worth it, pay off in the long run. Hoping to be a lot more buff by the time I turn 62. We'll see. So what else do I have to show you? Okay, I have all this stuff behind me. I have to line it all up so I know what I have to talk about. Let's start with this little thing. I made this yesterday, and I was actually ridiculously pleased with it because it worked out exactly how I wanted it to. I have all of these little tiny 1/2-inch swivel clasps, and I have some of my number 3 zippers left. I didn't want to use up the number 5 on this because how many pullers would I go through if I made a bunch of these? So I decided I was going to make a round pouch, and one of my kids had an old geometry set from way back, and I just drew a 4-inch circle, which I cut out of some batting, and then I cut the fabric out a bit bigger to allow for the seam allowance. And I thought, okay, rather than have the zipper go into the seam at the side, that'll probably make it stick out in an unpleasant way. So I put tiny tabs on the end, and I put a tiny zipper in, and I used a little bit of the zipper that I had cut off to hold the swivel hook. And I even remembered to put a label on the inside. But, and I haven't quite finished this, full disclosure, this has one tiny thing to finish on it. I figured out, without a tutorial, oh, go me, how to make this lined with no raw edges showing. I have to just finish this little hole. I just need to finish that tiny little gap in the lining, and it'll be done. I didn't quite finish that last night. So I'm thinking I could make a few of these because I was really pleased how that worked out. I don't think I'd want to go smaller than that. 4 inches across is a good size, maybe for some earbuds or coins or something like that. And I was thinking maybe of going bigger for circular needles, but then I'd have to go a lot bigger. So I'm not sure about that. I think I'll stick with this size because they're cute and I can sell them at a good price, by which I mean not very expensive. And so if people see them and want to not spend a lot of money, then they can maybe snap one of those up. So that was my prototype and came out. Yay! Oh, another thing went on the floor. Another bit of healthy and productive activity this week has been some gardening. We have had this compost heap at the bottom of the garden for ever since we moved in. It probably put there like 30 years ago, before we were here. And it was just a wooden frame. And we've always just tossed stuff in there, and it rarely got turned or anything. And it didn't really get wet enough for things to rot well because it was under the trees. And every now and again, we'd sort of empty it out and put some on the vegetable garden. But most of the time, all the kitchen scraps go in there. Right? We've got a couple of lidded buckets in the kitchen, and all the kitchen scraps go in there, which is awesome. But the city here was doing a special deal where you could buy these black composting bins, and they're just sort of round and static. They're not the tumbling kind, but they just sit there, and they have the lid and they have ventilation holes. So you put things in the top, and then they've got a little door at the bottom. You lift it up and all your lovely composted material comes out, so you can shovel it onto your garden. Mr. Stitches and I spent the morning setting up compost bins with chicken wire underneath to stop anything burrowing up underneath them. It's a beautiful day today. Got the laundry out. And those trees over on the right, bordering the neighbour's land, I did a bit of trimming of dead branches under there earlier. So progress has been made. Tomorrow we'll be digging out the old compost bin, which is down at the bottom of the garden. If you can see the middle of that picture, there's a couple of old wooden bins there which we've used since we moved in here in 1995. So those will be emptied tomorrow and transferred over to the black bins. So the squirrels are very confused. They've been crawling all over these compost bins and thinking, what the heck is this? This is new. This wasn't here before. How do I get into this? Because it smells interesting. But yeah, it required quite a bit of physical effort. And so Mr. Stitches and I were out there shoveling the old stuff out of the old compost heap, filling half of the bins already with what was in there. I've been pruning here and pruning there, and we've got quite the pile that will have to get put through the chipper at some point. Mr. Stitches can do that on his own. He puts his earplugs in and his safety glasses and gets on with that. But yeah, there's been a couple of good gardening sessions, and that feels good too, to have been outside and actually doing something physical and productive, and the garden looks so much tidier now. So that feels really good, because I have to say, I am not a gardener. He's been a gardener since he was a teenager, not me. If I could be in front of my sewing machine rather than in the garden, that's normally what I would do. I love to see the garden looking nice. I love flowers. I just don't want to put the work in, usually. However, I've decided we're going to have our nice little railing planters around our deck again this year. We got them a few years ago, and we put geraniums in them, and they look so nice. And of course, with Mr. Stitches being half Swiss, having red geraniums around your deck railing, it's like being in Switzerland again, isn't it? So something that he really likes, and I like it too, because it just brightens up the whole place. So hopefully we'll get that done again this year. All right, back to the sewing. Man, I've got so much to talk about, and I feel like I'm talking 19 to the dozen, and I haven't even had coffee today. So one of the things I thought would be fun to make was a scissor keeper. For a bit there, I was considering making some double-pointed needle holders, the ones that are just a little rectangle, and if you have like a sock in progress, you can put the case over it and snap it on, and it stops your stitches coming off your needles, or you can put it in your knitting bag and it doesn't poke anything. And then I got sidetracked by some scissor keepers. And so I never did make the DPN cozies this week. It's not to say I won't, but I haven't yet. So I made this little scissor keeper with a tutorial from Crafthouse Magic. It's really simple. You basically make, I think it's a square. Excuse me. You make a square and then you just fold it and sew it, fold it, sew it, add a snap. It's really simple. It holds a very small pair of scissors, like embroidery scissors. This one, obviously, you can make it in larger sizes. She does give you measurements for larger sizes. And it's cute. And, of course, using this cut, sew, repeat fabric for it was just ideal. Absolutely the perfect fabric for a scissor keeper. And because I didn't put the the label on until too late, I positioned it, sewed it, and you can see the stitching on the back, and it just wasn't quite in the right spot. So for some reason, and I can't remember what the reason was, I decided to go for a different scissor keeper next. I made another one from a tutorial from Sewingtimes. I've followed Sewingtimes' YouTube channel for years, and she's got a lot of good things. She's one of these, I believe, Asian women who there's one of these channels where she has a ton of tutorials and they're all like super quick and just music. There's no talking and no hand holding. And that's usually fine. However, I seem to have omitted to watch it all the way to the end and pay attention to what she did for the last step, because I made a goof. The first one I made, okay, she uses A4 paper. So the first mistake I made was she used A4 paper to make a pattern. I have letter-sized paper, don't I? Now, coming from Britain, I know A4 paper is slightly different size from letter size. Being in Canada, I have letter size. I thought, it'll be fine. Wasn't fine, particularly, because when I finished it, here's the first one I made. It's a larger one, and it's cool in that you could actually fit 3 pairs of scissors in here. But on her tutorial, when she does this folding, it's really simple because you fold this in, you fold this in, and you fold this back. But hers goes all the way to the edge here. And I was like, what have I done wrong? And I thought, maybe it's because I used letter-sized paper and it's not quite the same dimensions. Letter size is 8.5 by 11. And when I Googled A4, it's about, what was it? 8.25 by 11. It was about 1/4 of an inch difference, height and width. I can't remember what now. So I thought, okay, I messed up on this one. It's still usable, but it's not how it should be. So then I stuck a couple of sheets of paper together, made sure I was starting with a letter-sized piece, did a new pattern, even made a template out of that dollar store craft mat so that I could make a bunch more. This is the second one I made with the correct sized pattern. It still didn't fold all the way across. I thought, what am I doing wrong? I'm sure I'm doing exactly what she says to do in the tutorial. Got my label in the right place that time, because once I'd made the first one, I knew where to put the label for the second one. And I thought, it's usable, but it's still not quite right. I still went ahead and I cut out enough pieces for 6 more. So I made one. They've all got the cut, sew, repeat fabric on them. This one had the gold spot fabric. This one has dragonfly fabric. So the contrast just shows on the bottom part and on the inside of the flap. So you have to make sure that really your fabrics do coordinate nicely. Made one with solid purple. Made one with pretty pink, kind of a linen look texture that print has to it. Made one with knitting needles. And I made one, but I made this one the other way around because the sewing fabric I thought needed to show off more. And so I put it on the outside. And then I put the cut, sew, repeat on the lining. So here's the major goof that I made. After I had made all of these and I had got to the point where they were all finished, the snaps had been put on and everything, I slid some scissors into the pouch. Do you know where this is going? Can you tell where this is going? I put some of my larger scissors in here. Well, the pinking shears were too bulky. I mean, they fit, but I didn't really like how they fit. But I put a pair of dressmaking scissors in here and some smaller scissors in here. And really, you know, there's 3 pockets, should hold 3 scissors. And then I did this. And the flipping thing wouldn't snap shut, would it? And I'm like, oh. So if it's full of scissors, these are not going to shut properly. I think it will still close with a pair of scissors in, or maybe my embroidery scissors and my dressmaking scissors. But if you put a 3rd pair of medium-sized ones in there, it ain't going to fit. So I kicked myself, and then I went back and I watched the video. Well, I zoomed to the end of the video just to see what she did. She put 3 pairs of scissors in there before she positioned her snap, didn't she? So there I was, kicking myself for being so dumb. And so here's the question now. Do I take all of these snaps out of here? Because I can. I found out the other day that it is possible to take these snaps out with some pliers and a lot of squinting to make sure pieces of plastic don't fly in your eyes. So I can remove this and position this higher up, but I'm going to have a hole in my fabric there. What would you do? Would you leave them as they are and just let people know, well, you're going to have to keep just a couple of pairs of scissors and maybe something else skinny in there? For true disclosure, maybe charge a bit less for them because they don't work as they're intended to work? Or do I take the snap out, position it higher up, and somehow disguise that hole? I wonder if I was to soak it in water, if the fabric would sort of close up the hole, or if I've damaged some of the fibers by sticking my awl through there. I think probably I should go back to the one I made first and maybe just try that one and try changing that one. And if it looks terrible, I'll just have to leave the rest of them as they are. If there was a hole, how could I disguise that hole? I don't want to sew a button on because that would look weird. Oh, I guess I could put another snap down there with the cap side showing, and it would just be a purely decorative, functionless snap just to hide the fact that I made a hole where I didn't want to make a hole. So disappointing when that happens, especially when you made a batch of them and they're all wrong. Ugh. Well, I think after all that yakking, we're all caught up. I hope your crafting has been successful this week and you haven't gone and made any large goofs like me. My housework is done for the day. I am in the middle of making another batch of sourdough bread. I didn't mention that before, did I? I've been experimenting with sourdough bread, and you know what? It's always scared the heck out of me because I thought, oh, it's so much work, it's so much waiting, it's annoying, I'm not going to do it. I finally made some sourdough starter with something called, it's called raisin levain, or levain, Levain. And I found a very detailed recipe for the whole process. I think it's called sourdoughandolives.com. I'll double check that. And because we have been watching so many videos about Japanese bread bakers, it's absolutely hypnotic. You know, you can watch this person getting up in the middle of the night, making all sorts of different bread and buns and all sorts of things in their oven, which is often a wood-fired oven. And they're using this stuff called raisin levain. And I thought, oh, that was so cool. Instead of yeast, you can start your sourdough starter with raisin water. So once I had found this recipe to do it, I soaked some raisins and left that for a few days, and it started to bubble. And then you strain off the raisin water and you discard the raisins, and you use the water to mix with some flour to make a starter. And it's all, the first steps are all always awfully slow and painful. But once you've got your starter made, then you make your leaven, and then which is like your little blob of dough that you make before your dough. Oh, so many steps. You can see why I was worried about this whole process and put off by it. But raisin water, starter, leaven, dough. Ugh. So the first batch I made, it requires a lot of waiting, and the dough did not double as it was supposed to. And I thought, screw it, I'm going to bake it anyway. And it wasn't bad. It was edible. It was very dense. There was a little area inside the loaf which was a little bit undercooked. And I had used mostly white flour as per the recipe, but I didn't have spelt, so I used a bit of whole wheat. And I think the whole leaven just wasn't really ready, because when I made my second batch, it worked a lot better. I had even put some extra little refresher into my sourdough starter, and I put it out on the counter to come back to room temperature because I had put it in the fridge. And it was bubbling really well. And so I made a second batch, and it seemed to work better. I baked it, and it was really nice. It still didn't have that same rise as you know, those people on YouTube always seem to get a lovely rise, big holes in their bread. And I think my battery is about to run out on my phone. So I'm going to have to stop talking soon. So I'm making another batch today, and the starter is super bubbly, and I'm hoping it's going to work out. Anyway, my screen went really dark, and I have a feeling my phone is like 5%. So I'm going to say thanks for watching, and I hope to talk to you again very soon. Glad to have you here. Feel free to leave comments. I love the comments. I always reply to the comments. And have a great week. Bye for now.